Hello and welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about the biggest winners and losers from the latest playtest of Dark and Darker, starting off with the Cleric. So Cleric gains a few offensive spells with Holy Strike, Locust Swarm, and Earthquake, giving them a little bit of ranged options to use in the dungeon. Also, with spells recovering while resting, Clerics are no longer dependent on campfires to keep going, and honestly, having infinite heals is probably a little bit overpowered. Clerics also have access to new plate armor options, giving them a little bit more defense and a few new skills that also boost defense. There were some minor changes to the perks overall. Getting an extra 10% damage instead of 5 for blunt weapon mastery is a nice little bonus, and ultimately everything just feels great on the Cleric right now. Additionally, because Bard isn't really a true healer, Clerics have secured their #1 spot in terms of healing and support in the dungeon. And they are still a powerhouse in 1v1. A lot of people are still complaining about Clerics running around in the Goblin Caves. Moving on to the Rogue. Rogue is another clear winner in this playtest. With the addition of Double Jump, Rogues have never felt more fun. It is absolutely a blast running through the dungeon. Additionally, hand crossbows give rogues a dedicated range option. Combined with their ability to access high up spaces with double jump, rogues can be a true menace. And hand crossbows proc some of their amazing damage buffs. So being able to rupture and poison your target with a single shot from range in the shadows, in the rafters, rogues are a true menace. Not to mention a few bonus perks that have been added. Rogues can now sprint out of stealth, have multiple ways to bypass armor through physical or magical damage, and there are even new hat slot items that give massive stat bonuses. On top of all that, the perk Jokester gives you and all your allies +2 to all stats. This really feels like something the Bard should be getting, but hey, rogues have it for now, and so rogues are a clear winner. Now on to the minor winners. This includes both the Fighter and the Barbarian. Starting off with the Fighter, we have the new Slayer perk. By giving up their ability to wear plate armor, fighters can get +5 weapon damage when using 2 weapons. This isn't a bad trade-off, especially right at the start of the game when you don't have plate armor anyways, and with plate armor slowing you down so much, it's not always worth it. And the +5 damage can even be used right out of the gate. Just use your arming sword in one hand, throw your torch in the offhand, and you're good to go. All of a sudden, you're hitting 40 damage headshots with gray gear. And with new items being added all the time, fighters are always going to be a winner. Because with the Weapon Master perk, they can use anything they want. So if you want to, you can use a hand crossbow. Lots of fun options for the fighter, and no major nerfs makes them a moderate winner. And onto the Barbarian. There was a minor nerf to Axe Mastery, but there have been a few new fun perks and skills. Achilles Strikes works with Francisca axes, and ultimately Barb didn't get nerfed significantly, and they were already in a great spot, which means without any additional nerfs aside from 5 damage to axes, Barbs are still a winner. Now we're going to talk about some of the losers. First up, the Ranger. A lot of people felt that arrows would absolutely gut the class, having limited access to their primary source of damage, but this wasn't necessarily a huge change. Yeah, it makes it a little bit more annoying and it takes up inventory space, reducing the amount of free loot you get to bring onto the dungeon, but Rangers were already the king of that, so this is a fair nerf in my opinion. And they did make a hotfix during the playtest to increase stack size of arrows to 15 and have a new Ranger start off with 30 arrows, which honestly feels like arrows are never really an issue on the Ranger anyways. It should also be noted that Triple Shot no longer fully reloads the quiver if you're using it with only a few arrows left, which feels pretty fair. The big loss for the Ranger, however, is with traps. Traps don't stack to 3 anymore, and you only start off with 1, and traps are one of the best ways to deal with fighters and barbarians pushing you. This is also contributing to fighters and barbs being a winner, because traps are no longer as annoying. There are a few new items for the Ranger, however, with the Forest Hood giving a fun little stat bonus and opportunities to use the hand crossbow. Rangers are still in a fine spot, but going from the top spot down to middle of the pack makes them a bit of a loser. Next up we have Bard. Really, they're not a huge loser because they're a brand new class, so there's not much to lose, but Bard just feels a little bit unfinished. They deal moderate damage in melee, and they have some nice support skills and really fun utility. But in terms of their perks and skills, some of them just don't do anything. Encore is essentially useless because the minigame to play the songs isn't really that hard, and having 2 opportunities to use sheet music doesn't matter because there's only 4 songs in the game. So there's no point. The only other skill they can use is Dissonance, which has limited uses and is fine. Really, what's really impacting the Bard is they don't necessarily replace the Cleric as a healer, so they're kind of just replacing the Wizard. And the Wizard, honestly, is very replaceable, and you could replace a Wizard in any comp almost. But the Bard does a decent job of providing support. Their AoE speed buff feels really good, especially with a Cleric Fighter combination. And ultimately, Bards are going to be a cool class, but right now they feel a little bit lacking. So they're a minor loser. Finally, we're going to talk about the biggest loser, the Wizard. Wizard suffered a huge nerf to damage and cast time in the most recent playtest. It feels really bad playing a Wizard right now. Even multiple direct hit fireballs to a naked player feels like it barely tickles them. Ultimately, Wizards are still just super gear dependent, and with the nerf to drop rate and a shorter playtest, it just feels bad. That being said, there were some nice changes for the Wizard. The ability to just sit down and recover spells means you can run skills other than meditate. And Arcane Shield specifically seems like a really cool option. It gives you the opportunity to negate other magic damage, and it'll even prevent damage from the swarm because it's not just a physical shield. This is a really cool skill, and it does open some cool playstyle options in the future, but Wizard really needs some love. Hopefully either with increases to the base damage of spells and a slight reduction in how scaling works. And honestly, they could just reduce the way will scales overall because clerics are so powerful that a minor nerf to cleric probably wouldn't be a bad thing. And I say that as someone who plays the cleric as one of their favorite classes. So yeah, those are my clear winners and losers of this latest playtest for Dark and Darker. Clerics and rogues definitely at the top. Fighters, barbs, and rangers kind of in the middle, with fighters and barbs eking out rangers just because of that nerf to traps. And then finally, bards and wizards feeling a little bit lackluster. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll catch you in the next one.